Yeah, we were gonna clean up the deep state. Tulsi was gonna go in there and set a different course, but does not apply to Israel, I
Yeah,
guess.
they told her no, you can't. She said, "Oh, okay."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so so this was Josh Kraushaar announcing it earlier in the week. Scoop, anti-Israel commentator tapped as deputy director of national intelligence. Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at a Koch-backed think tank, said that U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza was a strategic and moral mistake. Here's Aaron the Buzzsaw quote tweeting this. Like his would-be boss, Tulsi Gabbard, Daniel Davis is a combat veteran who has criticized the politicization of intelligence and sending soldiers off to die based on lies. This includes in Iraq and Afghanistan, where he served. But because you're not allowed to criticize unfettered U.S. support for Israel's occupation, he will face a backlash, and perhaps Aaron from his own boss, who certainly has not been on board with not supporting that unfettered support for Israel. Um, so this is a thread they seem to have gotten really upset about because they all of his detractors quote it. UK media today published evidence that the Western skeptics who ridiculed the Palestinian Health Ministry had indeed given accurate numbers of civilian deaths from Israeli mill ops. It
Military
was
ops, I'm assuming.
military ops. It was vastly understated. It would be somewhat less bad if there was at least an anguishing dilemma among those who claim to care about the lives of the weak and powerless. Something like, well, Israel was attacked on 10/7 and had to defend themselves, but were daily horrified by the kids who were dying. But there is so little of that, almost none, actually. On a practical level, we give away enormous leverage and credibility globally to hold anyone accountable for acts of wanton violence because we not merely turn a blind eye to it, we cheer it on and supply the means to do more. On a moral level, this is a stain on our character as a nation, as a culture, that will not soon go away. So here's a Israel simp here, Olga Lautman. Also has the Ukraine flag. You ever notice it's almost always both? It's almost
Yeah.
never either or. Wow, another Russian agent being tapped as deputy director of national intelligence. He has been quoted in Russian media and is an ally forever. Predictably, he's with Russia's position on Israel. Putin!
Wow, that is brain rot of a kind, man. I think that person's probably more a Ukraine
Yeah,
simp than
yeah.
because Russia is anti-Israel. That means it's bad to be anti-Israel. Wow, you
That's
really
some
got some work to do on yourself if that's the way you think about things.
yeah, that's some critical thinking skills right there.
Yeah.
Predictably, the ADL jumped in. It would be extremely dangerous for Daniel Davis to be the deputy director of national intelligence. He has diminished Hamas's 10/7 attack, undermined U.S. support for Israel's right to defend itself, and blatantly denies the grave threat the Iranian regime poses to global stability and American interests. All of this makes him unfit for this key security role.
So he's
Now,
anti-genocide and he's against war with Iran. Yeah, what were they thinking? What were they thinking?
what were they thinking? Now with
Yeah.
Tulsi, you never know what you're going to get. You never know which Tulsi's going to show up, but that in a way that's a good thing because if you don't like Tulsi's position on something, you can surely do a simple Google search to find her taking the opposite position.
Yes.
So here she is in 2018. Israel needs to stop using live ammunition in its response to unarmed protesters in Gaza. It has resulted in over 50 dead and thousands seriously wounded. So I guess it was that Tulsi that decided to pick him. And maybe it was this Tulsi that decided to withdraw the nomination.
On our
So
college campuses are not these protests actually truly calling for peace, understanding the dangers of the situation there. They have become puppets of this radical Islamist organization that stands diametrically opposed to our ideology of freedom. And unfortunately, President Biden, he seems to be afraid of being called an Islamophobe, which is why he's shirking away from a very clear statement of standing against anti-Semitism, for free speech, and against this radical Islamist ideology.
Will the real Tulsi please stand up? Please
Real
stand
Jekyll and
up.
Hyde thing.
Yeah, is it the Tulsi who was a young global leader? It's always amazing to me, these deep state warriors, people fighting the deep state who aren't concerned about that. I always heard those people, young global leader, you're disqualified. Much less she was the commander of a PSYOP unit in the Army, literally directed a PSYOP unit. So who knows which Tulsi made the decision to pick him and which Tulsi made the decision to drop him. But needless to say, Gabbard drops pick for top intelligence post, a critic of Israel on Gaza. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, opted not to name a critic of Israel's war in Gaza to a top post managing briefings for the president after the proposed appointment upset some members of President Trump's coalition, according to officials familiar with the deliberations. Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at a Washington think tank who is skeptical of American intervention overseas, was undergoing a background check to become the deputy director for mission integration, the officials said. The post is a powerful job that oversees the compiling of the president's daily brief, a compendium of intelligence assessments that goes to the White House and top policymakers. But news of the proposed appointment generated blowback on the right. A senior administration official said Ms. Gabbard reconsidered her choice given the criticism, and other officials confirmed the decision. Mr. Davis is a senior fellow at Defense Priorities, a think tank with funding from Charles Koch that has a number of alumni in key positions in the Trump administration. Defense Priorities has taken a skeptical view of U.S. military involvement in the Middle East and has supported Mr. Trump's efforts to reach an immediate ceasefire in the war in Ukraine. Former intelligence officials were also critical of the pick. Mark Polymeropoulos, that's a name, former CIA operations officer and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, said Mr. Davis's positions were outside the ideological mainstream of the Republican Party. Quote, his overt criticism of Israel and total opposition to any military action against Iran seems to run counter to current administration policy, Mr. Polymeropoulos said. Hey, man, Atlantic Council, this guy looks pretty deep state to me. I thought we were getting rid of the deep state. It's like the deep state's still welcome. Just a different part of the deep state, maybe, or maybe the same part of the deep state. Maybe they just saw Harris wasn't up to the job of starting World War III quite the way they wanted to, and they decided to go with this crew because that's about as deep state as it gets. You got the director of national intelligence is a former young global leader, director of a PSYOP unit. You got the guy in the Atlantic Council, still in good standing, having a say in who the administration picks. You got the Koch brothers think tank staffing the administration. You got a Treasury secretary who's a George Soros alumni. Looks like the deep state's doing just fine under this administration. Haven't missed a beat.
The war with Iran certainly seems on schedule to me. I don't know. It sure looks like they're pretty determined to do that. Yeah,
right on time. They might have thought Kamala didn't have the stones for it.
Yeah.
Allies of Mr. Davis had defended him and said there was no hint of anti-Semitism or opposition to Israel in his work. He is skeptical of military action when it does not directly align with American interests, they say, and troubled by the use of proxies when the United States is unwilling to put its own troops in harm's way. While Mr. Trump has repeatedly called for Palestinians to be removed from Gaza to allow it to be redeveloped into a beach resort, Mr. Davis has said the removal of people from the territory would be ethnic cleansing. How dare he? How dare he? Last I heard, the Kochs don't hire left-wing radicals. but expressing the merest human consideration for the lives of Palestinian children and saying, hey, maybe World War III with Iran is not in the best interest of the nation. That was too much. That was too much. That was too outside the boundaries. So I really have to ask, what's the difference between what you would have gotten if Harris had won? You would have gotten exactly the same pro-Israel policy. All these maniacs were ginning up war with Iran. All you get here is they don't feel a need to go out like Jake Sullivan and pretend to have human emotions and squint like Antony Blinken and pretend to feel bad about it. While Mr. Trump has repeatedly called for Palestinians to be removed from Gaza to allow it to be redeveloped into a beach resort, Mr. Davis has said the removal of people from the territory would be ethnic cleansing. How dare he? How dare he? Last I heard, the Kochs don't hire left-wing radicals, but expressing the merest human consideration for the lives of Palestinian children and saying, hey, maybe World War III with Iran is not in the best interest of the nation. That was too much. That was too much. That was too outside the boundaries. So I really have to ask, what's the difference between what you would have gotten if Harris had won? You would have gotten exactly the same pro-Israel policy. All these maniacs were ginning up war with Iran. All you get here is they don't feel a need to go out like Jake Sullivan and pretend to have human emotions and squint like Antony Blinken and pretend to feel bad about it. They just, fuck the kids. We're going to open a pizzeria.
Yeah. Or what if, God forbid, Tulsi had not been confirmed for DNI director? God damn it, we're going to the Mets for Tulsi Gabbard. God damn it, if she doesn't get through, we're going to race it. Why? Look, she picks this guy. They tell her, no, sorry, he's not maniacal enough on Israel. He's not hawkish enough on Iran. And so it's a no-go. Okay, it's a no-go. Right. This administration is owned by Israel from top to bottom.
Yep.
From top to bottom. They are completely owned by Israel. Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate. He always was, just never for Russia, but for Israel. He is owned by Israel. The man works for Israel. He is more committed to a foreign country than he is to this country, obviously. I don't want to hear any bullshit from any of these people. I'm so sick of these fucking people. Tucker Carlson goes on this big tour about how, an American leader is, bound by his duty to represent his people. Donald Trump is Israel first, literally. It's not just a catchphrase. Like, he literally prioritizes the interests of this foreign country over his own. And this dates back to 2016. The Nation did that great write-up about how actually, yes, there was collusion in 2016, not between the Russians and Donald Trump, but by the Israelis and Donald Trump. That's why, as much as Russiagate always felt like bullshit because it was, it's not like the Trump team looked exactly innocent. There was always like, okay, there is some weird behavior.
That's what was great about that article, because it revealed, those things you thought were kind of like, they were, but you were looking at the wrong country.
Exactly.
It really was collusion with Israel.
It just didn't trace back to Russia. It traced back to Israel. And because both parties are owned by Israel, that is a truth that will remain largely unreported for the time being. But I've never seen a politician more owned by Israel. And that's quite the statement. That is quite the statement. Richie Torres, there is stiff competition in both parties. But I've never seen someone so brazenly just kowtow to a foreign country like this. Yeah.
He makes Chuck Schumer, a man who went on stage at AIPAC and contemptuously dismissed anyone who doesn't believe in the Torah, look like a moderate.
Yeah. No, it is just incredible. I've never really seen anything. People have never seen anything like it. They say I'm the most owned politician they've ever seen. And I really, in this context, this guy just spoke.
I said, Miriam, this time, could you use the smaller strap on? I'm a little sore. I just got off a flight
today. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it is wild. It is really wild because, when you look at this guy's statements and then you see him described as this radical, I mean, the guy's barely a moderate. The guy's not, I wouldn't even say the guy is like necessarily even anti-Israel based on those statements. He's anti-genocide and doesn't think we should risk World War III because Israel wants a war with Iran. Like, that seems fairly, I mean, that's not a radical where I come from. But no, too much for them. Too much for them. Really, really crazy. Really crazy. It's very, very scary because there's nothing Israel wouldn't do. We already know that. Like there's no lengths to which Israel would not go to fulfill their objectives.
No.
And when you have a president that's just completely in their pocket, it means there's nothing he won't do for them. Am I convinced Trump is going to try and keep us out of war with Iran now? No. That seems more fast-tracked than ever before. They've been signaling a war with Iran since 9/11, and I've never been more convinced it's going to happen within this presidential term than I am now. And there's been a lot of chirping about that, going back, 24 years now. But I've never been more, I won't say convinced it's going to happen because it's not a certainty, but I don't think it's ever been more likely than now.
Please clap.